Have you ever stood in a room full of family and felt completely alone? The laughter is lively, conversations flow freely, and yet deep down, a strange emptiness grips you. It's like standing at a party where the music plays loud, but you're wearing noise-canceling headphones. The disconnect feels almost surreal. Amid the warmth of family, one person, a parent, sibling, or relative, has a way of making you feel invisible, powerless, or even small. Their presence drains your energy. Their words cut in subtle but sharp ways that linger long after the conversations end. We are taught that family is sacred, that blood bonds are unbreakable, and loyalty is paramount. But what if clinging to those beliefs is the very thing that traps us in cycles of pain? What if loyalty becomes a cage instead of a refuge? Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But when the harm comes from those closest to us, the suffering becomes painfully real. It's easy to dismiss it, telling yourself, that's just how they are, or even worse, maybe it's my fault. Yet deep down, your instincts whisper the truth. Some people aren't merely difficult, they're destructive. They manipulate, deceive, and wear kindness as a mask to hide their true intentions. This isn't about everyday family disagreements or the occasional harsh word. It's about something far darker, behavior that over time erodes your confidence, distorts your sense of self, and makes you question your worth. Picture a plant slowly wilting under poison disguised as nourishment. On the surface, everything looks fine, but beneath the soil, the roots are weakened. The poison here is not just in words, but in subtle actions that chip away at your spirit until you barely recognize yourself. The Stoics teach us that the key to freedom lies in focusing on what we can control. One of those things is awareness. Our ability to see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. If we fail to recognize the signs, we risk being ensnared by guilt, obligation, and emotional harm. Today, we'll explore 6 warning signs that a family member isn't just toxic, but genuinely dangerous. This isn't about spreading fear, it's about bringing clarity. Because once you see the truth, you can reclaim your power and set yourself free. Let's begin. Number 1, they enjoy your pain. There is no greater betrayal than realizing that someone who shares your blood takes pleasure in your suffering. Family is supposed to be a refuge, a place of support and understanding. But what happens when a family member not only fails to lift you up, but actively delights in watching you fall? This realization is unsettling, even painful. Ignoring it won't change the truth. The Stoics remind us to see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. And the truth is this: some people, even those closest to us, thrive on our misery. At first, it's easy to explain away their behavior. You tell yourself they don't mean to hurt you, that they're just blunt, or that they express love in a tough way. But over time, a pattern emerges. They don't just fail to support you, they seem to enjoy your struggles. When you face hardship, whether it's a breakup, a job loss, or a personal failure, instead of offering a comforting word, they mock you. They say, "I told you so," or smirk as if your pain validates something within them. It's not just their words, but their energy. You can feel their satisfaction when you're at your lowest. And sometimes the cruelty isn't loud. It's quiet, passive, insidious. When you need them most, they disappear. They dismiss your suffering, tell you it's not a big deal, or shift the conversation to themselves. This is not care, it's control. Their indifference is a weapon designed to make you feel small and unworthy of sympathy. The more you suffer, the more powerful they feel. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." If someone enjoys your pain, do not become bitter, become aware. Understand that their behavior is a reflection of them, not you. You are not weak for feeling hurt, but you must not let that hurt define you. Recognize the truth and act accordingly. Set boundaries, refuse to engage in their games, and most importantly, reclaim your power. You deserve to be surrounded by those who uplift you, not those who feed off your suffering. Do not waste your energy seeking validation from someone who enjoys your downfall. Walk away, not in anger, but in clarity. Because the moment you stop allowing them to control your emotions, you win. Number 2, they compete with you, not support you. Family should be a foundation, a place where you are supported, not measured. Yet some family members see you not as a loved one, but as a rival. Every achievement you share is not met with joy, but with comparison. Instead of standing beside you, they position themselves ahead. The worst part? This competition is often disguised as harmless, playful teasing, or even concern. But beneath it lies something darker: jealousy, insecurity, and an unspoken need to see you beneath them. This person cannot celebrate your victories without finding a way to make themselves look superior. When you land a promotion, they immediately mention how much higher their salary is. If you accomplish a personal goal, they remind you they've done something bigger. Even in small, everyday moments, they turn conversations into a game of one-upmanship. You might say, "I finally finished that project I was working on." And they'll respond with, "Oh, that's nice. I finished mine weeks ago." No matter what you achieve, they will find a way to minimize it. The Stoics teach us that external validation, whether praise or comparison, should not define our sense of worth. But in a family dynamic, this is difficult. You expect support, yet instead, you find yourself subtly undermined. The competition isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's a backhanded comment like, "Well, you had an easier path than I did," or "Not everyone is lucky enough to have your advantages." These words seem harmless, but over time, they plant seeds of doubt. You start questioning whether your success is real, whether you truly earned it, or whether you even deserve to feel proud. Then there are those who go beyond words. If they sense you're growing, evolving, or stepping into a new level of success, they may actively try to hold you back. They'll dismiss your ambitions, make you second-guess yourself, or even sabotage your progress. A Stoic understands that envy is the mark of an unfulfilled soul, one that measures its own worth only in comparison to others. Their competition with you is not about you, it's about them. But here is your freedom. You do not have to play their game. Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." You owe them no reaction, no validation, and certainly no participation in their unspoken race. You are not in competition with anyone but the person you were yesterday. So step away, not with resentment, but with clarity. True family support is not measured in comparisons, but in shared joy. Surround yourself with those who celebrate with you, not those who feel threatened by your growth. Let them compete with their own insecurities while you walk your path unshaken and unbothered. Number 3, they constantly manipulate your emotions. Few things cut deeper than emotional manipulation from a family member. Family should be a place of safety, where your emotions are heard and understood. But when someone close to you twists your feelings for their own gain, it feels like the deepest betrayal. The Stoics teach us to master our emotions, but how do you stay grounded when someone is constantly pulling the strings? Manipulation isn't always obvious. It doesn't always come in the form of yelling, threats, or dramatic confrontations. More often, it's subtle, creeping into your mind in ways that make you question yourself. Have you ever felt like no matter what you say or do, it's never right? Like you're always on edge, waiting for their mood to shift, never knowing if today will bring kindness or cold detachment? That's the mark of a manipulator, keeping you emotionally off balance, making sure you're too preoccupied with their reactions to trust your own feelings. One of their most common tools is guilt tripping. You open up about your struggles, hoping for support, but instead of empathy, you get a reminder of everything they've done for you. Suddenly, your pain becomes a burden, and you feel selfish for even seeking comfort. You're made to believe that their love is conditional, something you must constantly earn by suppressing your own needs. But love, true love, is not a transaction. Then there's gaslighting, a more insidious form of control. You confront them about a hurtful comment, and instead of owning up to it, they twist the story. "I never said that. You're overreacting. You're too sensitive." Over time, this constant rewriting of reality makes you question your own memories and emotions. You start doubting yourself, wondering if you're imagining things or if the problem is really you. And that's exactly what they want: control over your perception and feelings. Perhaps the most ruthless form of manipulation is weaponizing your vulnerabilities. You trusted them with your fears, past mistakes, and deepest insecurities. Now they use those very things against you, bringing them up to shame, silence, and ensure you never feel strong enough to stand up to them. A loving family member holds your pain with care. A manipulative one sharpens it into a blade. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If someone is constantly making you feel guilty, anxious, or unworthy, your mind begins to absorb those emotions as truth. But they are not the truth. You are not obligated to accept emotional abuse simply because it comes from family. Recognize it for what it is: control, not love. Set boundaries, refuse to engage in their games, and most importantly, reclaim your emotional freedom. Number 4, they never take responsibility for their actions. A person who refuses to take responsibility for their actions creates an exhausting cycle, one where blame is shifted, truth is distorted, and resolution is impossible. At first, you might make excuses for them. Maybe they don't realize what they're doing. Maybe they had a difficult past. Maybe if I'm patient, they'll change. But over time, the pattern becomes clear. They never acknowledge their wrongs. Instead, they dodge accountability, rewrite history, and somehow always make you the problem. It's as if they have an instinctive defense mechanism against admitting fault. If they say something cruel and you call them out, they won't apologize. Instead, they'll dismiss your feelings. "You're too sensitive." "That's not what I meant." Notice how the focus shifts. It's no longer about their harmful words, but about your reaction. Suddenly, you're defending your emotions instead of addressing their behavior. This is no accident. It's manipulation. The Stoics teach us to focus only on what we can control, and one thing you cannot control is forcing accountability onto someone who refuses to take it. No matter how patiently you explain, how much evidence you provide, or how reasonably you approach the situation, they will twist the narrative. They blame circumstances, other people, or even you, anything to avoid looking inward. Over time, this begins to wear you down. You start doubting yourself, wondering, am I overreacting? Am I being unfair? Think back to past disagreements with this person. Have they ever truly owned their mistakes? Or do they always find a way to justify, excuse, or outright deny their wrongdoing? Some will even take it further, making you question reality itself. They pretend the issue never happened, act like you imagined the whole thing, or insist you're making a big deal out of nothing. This slow erosion of truth creates an emotional imbalance where your pain is invalidated, your voice is drowned out, and your worth is diminished. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." In other words, don't waste your energy trying to make someone change. Focus on living by your own values. If a family member refuses to acknowledge their harmful actions, that is their burden to carry, not yours. Without accountability, there is no growth. If they never own up to their behavior, they will never change. And if you keep hoping for a different outcome, you will only find yourself trapped in an endless cycle of frustration and emotional exhaustion. You should never have to beg for an apology, fight for basic respect, or shrink yourself to maintain peace with someone who refuses to meet you halfway. A family member who avoids responsibility is not just frustrating, they are emotionally draining. Setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty, it is an act of self-respect. You deserve relationships where your feelings are acknowledged, your pain is not dismissed, and accountability is seen as a path to growth, not a threat. If someone refuses to own their mistakes, let them sit with them alone. You have a life to live, one free from the weight of carrying responsibility for someone who refuses to carry their own. Number 5, they only reach out when they want something. There is something deeply unsettling about realizing that a family member only contacts you when they need something. It's a painful truth that, once seen, cannot be ignored. You might go weeks without hearing from them. No messages, no check-ins, no sign that they care about your well-being. But then suddenly your phone rings. For a brief moment, you feel a spark of hope. Maybe they finally just want to talk, to connect, to see how you've been. But as the conversation unfolds, the truth becomes clear. They need a favor, a loan, or some other form of help. Once they get what they want, they vanish again. leaving you feeling used, not loved. At first, you may dismiss it. They must be busy. Maybe they just don't realize what they're doing. You tell yourself, it's family. I should help. And yes, family should support one another. But a relationship built on one-sided expectations is not family. It's an emotional transaction. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." If every interaction leaves you feeling drained, unseen, or unappreciated, then it's time to shift your perspective. Think back to the last time you struggled. Did they reach out? Did they offer support, or were they nowhere to be found until they needed something from you? Imagine you've had a difficult week. Maybe you're grieving. Maybe you're overwhelmed with stress. You hesitate to call them because deep down, you know how the conversation will go. If you do reach out, your pain is brushed aside, replaced by their own needs. Weeks pass, and just as you begin to move on, they call, without acknowledging your struggles, without asking how you've been, just with another request. Over time, this pattern erodes something within you. It makes you question your value. Do they care about me at all, or am I just useful to them? You start to wonder if your worth in their eyes is tied solely to what you can provide. The Stoics remind us that external circumstances should not dictate our inner peace. But when someone repeatedly treats you as a resource rather than a person, it's hard not to feel the weight of it. But here is the truth. You are not an ATM. You are not a tool to be picked up when needed and discarded when you are no longer useful. True relationships, whether family or otherwise, are built on mutual care, not convenience. If you find yourself always giving while they only take, it's time to reassess. Setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of self-respect. You have the right to say no, to protect your energy, to step away from relationships that only drain you. This doesn't mean you must cut them off completely, but it does mean you must recognize the imbalance and adjust accordingly. Epictetus said, "If someone is unable to live up to your expectations, that is their choice. But you must choose whether to accept it or move on." If a family member only reaches out when they need something, it may be time for a difficult conversation or perhaps a quiet step back. You deserve relationships that nourish your soul, not ones that leave you feeling empty. Recognizing the pattern is the first step. What you do next is entirely within your power. Number 6, they violate your boundaries. Few things are more exhausting than a family member who constantly disregards your boundaries. Boundaries are not walls to shut people out. They are the framework that protects your emotional well-being. They define what you will and won't accept, allowing relationships to be built on mutual respect. But when someone repeatedly ignores them, it creates a toxic dynamic, one where your needs are dismissed and your sense of control slowly erodes. Imagine clearly expressing your limits, whether it's needing personal space, keeping certain topics off limits, or simply asking for respect in how you're treated. Yet time and again, this person disregards them. They push, they demand, they intrude. Perhaps you've asked for quiet time to recharge, yet they call at all hours. Maybe you've drawn a line on certain discussions, but they continuously bring them up, dismissing your discomfort as an overreaction. They might guilt trip you into compliance, making you feel selfish for setting boundaries at all. The Stoics teach that we cannot control others, only our response to them. When someone repeatedly violates your boundaries, the real question isn't why they do it, but why you allow it to continue. Each time you let their behavior slide, it reinforces their belief that your limits don't matter. Over time, this dynamic drains you, making you question whether you're being unreasonable. You're not. Your boundaries are valid. Their refusal to respect them is not a reflection of your worth, but of their disregard for your autonomy. Epictetus reminds us, how long will you wait before you demand the best for yourself? If someone constantly ignores your needs, it's time to stand firm. No one, not even family, has the right to dictate what you should tolerate. Boundaries are an act of self-respect, and enforcing them is not selfish. It's necessary. If they refuse to honor them, perhaps the real boundary you need to set is distance. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you seen these warning signs in someone close to you? Are you struggling to break free from a toxic family dynamic? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Remember, awareness is the first step to reclaiming your peace. You are not obligated to tolerate manipulation, disrespect, or emotional harm, no matter who it comes from. Strength isn't just about endurance, it's about knowing when to walk away. If this message resonated with you, give it a like and subscribe for more insights on protecting your mind, your heart, and your inner peace. Stay strong, stay mindful, and most importantly, stay true to yourself.